I had mitral valve prolapse, so which just basically means the mitral valve in your heart is leaking as blood pumps from one chamber into another. Some of it leaks back into the chamber it came from. It was about 16 years ago that I had this strange incident where I lost my speech. I felt fine. I felt like I was thinking clearly, but I just couldn't speak. And of course we did the whole emergency room visit and all of the typical tests you may do, and the head scans and whatnot, and didn't really find a lot. But in the process, in the follow-up process, I underwent a TEE, a transesophageal echocardiogram, and where they actually get a more kind of closer look at the heart by using a device that they stick down your esophagus. And so in the process of doing that, they found this leak. And so whether it contributed to the incident where I didn't have speech or not, they don't really know. They think in the end they classified it as a TIA, a trans ischemic attack. I've never had one since. And so it was a one-time event, but led to the discovery of this condition that ultimately we had repaired with surgery. I always felt like as a younger athlete in high school, and even as I progressed through the college years, I felt like I should have been in better cardiovascular shape given the work that I was putting in. And so I did have some sort of feeling that something was wrong. And with my team of doctors, the strategy was, let's just keep an eye on it and see if it does begin to have more of an impact on your life than you want. And quite honestly, I was living with it, reasonably well, and wasn't really impacting my lifestyle. But so through the monitoring process, the things they look for, or some of the things they look for anyway, is kind of changes in construction of the heart. And so does it start to enlarge a little bit because it's essentially overworking itself? And because I was monitored regularly, we really saw that change happening, right at the beginning of when it was happening. And so when we started to see that probably 18 months or so before the surgery, we really picked up the pace in terms of talking about what surgery would mean, how it would, what it would look like, and what the recovery would look like. And then decided that, this really is the best time for me to do it. To know you're going to have an open heart surgery, essentially a year in advance, is both a good thing and a bad. It gives you a lot of time to try to prepare logistically the things that your family and your support network will have to do for you. But it also gives you that period of time where you think about things you don't always think about. One of the things they have you do is make sure your will's up to date, make sure they have it on file, and they talk about mortality rates. And so all of those things, they're not pleasant things to think about. It's reality. But I always felt like I was doing the right thing. I felt like I had the time I needed to prepare, both physically and mentally, but still that emotional component leading up to it it was different. It was different, and something that I'm grateful I had the support of my family to go through. I was prepared physically to go through it, and I was prepared mentally for what it might mean. But the other emotional piece and is the recovery. I mean, the recovery is difficult, and going through that process and physically not being able to do what you did before, even though it's for a short time. It's a really strange experience to go through, and you feel weak as an individual through the process. And so to know and to see the strength that you have around you, support you. In the end, looking back on it, was just something that you always knew was there, but when you see it in action, I mean, it really validates so many things in your life that, again, you knew you were there, but you knew they were there, but I just never could have gone through the whole process without the strength of my wife and the kids. And I'm just over a year now out from my surgery, and and feel really well, both mentally and physically, and truly do look back on it as something like, other than looking at the scar every day, you just don't think about it much, and it is something that was done in your past. So it turns out that the kind of guidelines they gave me were for me anyway, really, really on target. One thing that struck me when I was going through the surgical process and the recovery process while in the hospital is that and again, another instance where I felt lucky, is grateful, is that I was really young. I was the young guy on the floor, and I just saw that it, for people who are a little bit further along in age, it's an even more difficult recovery. As difficult as it was for me, or for younger people, it's really difficult. If you're not young and strong and relatively healthy. So getting on any kind of doubt you have about your health early, and speaking with your primary care physician initially, and getting the right referrals to professionals who deal with heart issues is if you have any doubt, do it early. I don't think you want to live through something like this and have to go through something like this, but to be on the other side of it, and then to be able to at least speak with somebody and listen to somebody who's dealing with some of the same things that you were thinking about for 16 years, is kind of an interesting experience for me to be on the other side.